On today's episode of the Habitz Podcast, we've got Hope McKellar from Hope McKellar PR sharing with us her good habits when it comes to getting yourself in front of the media. So thanks for joining us, Hope. First things first, what qualifies you to be our guest expert when it comes to public relations?
Hi, thanks for having me. So I run my own PR agency and I am actually a former journalist. So I've got the experience of both sides and I was obviously the business editor at a local paper. So I kind of know the do's and don'ts of what to do with PR from a journalist perspective. So that kind of sets me out from different PRs that are out there.
So I imagine you work with a lot of businesses, both sort of local businesses and large businesses. What are some of the mistakes that you see people do when it comes to PR?
So the first one that I used to see all the time that would sort of put me off press releases when I was working as a journalist would be people who come at you with like a me sales pitch, sort of very self-centered. They've definitely written it themselves and they haven't really put much thought into what the journalist actually wants to see, and it's just written from, what they think is interesting, but really they haven't thought about what the journalist wants to see and what will get that story published.
We've actually had someone on here talking about copy, and they call it weeing on clients. If you say we, and you talk about yourself all the time, no one wants to read it or find it interesting.
Yeah, and that's it. And I think it's definitely one of those things that it's quite hard to sort of detach yourself and speak about yourself in the third person, but it's definitely an off-putting thing for a journalist to see when it's written in first person.
So what would your second bad habit be that you see quite often?
So a lot of people send out press releases just sort of really sporadically. They don't really put much thought into it, and they will write about things that aren't really relevant to the publication that they're sending it to. So I think really it's just a lack of consistency there, and they're often missing really good sort of newsworthy things that they've got going on in the business, and aren't sending things out when they need to be, and instead are sending out press releases about things that are really like irrelevant to the journalist and their publication, and they're just missing a trick really. So
instead of throwing enough mud hoping some sticks, sending a well thought out press release to the right publication would probably be more beneficial to you, I imagine.
Yeah, and just having like a strategy would definitely help in that sense as well.
And your third and final bad habit, what is something that really annoys you when it comes to PR?
So the third bad habit would be to rule out local publications. A lot of people come to me saying, I want to be featured in the Times, I want to be in the Guardian, and I want to be in all these glossy magazines. And they completely disregard any local small publications when really it's a ladder that needs to be climbed rather than just aiming high and then not getting anything in return.
I suppose doing it that way as well, I can see why it would be more beneficial to aim locally first. It's number one, you're building a strong audience, like a foundation of your audience and crowd and network locally. But also, any mistakes that you make, you probably want to make them, or learning that needs to be done on a smaller scale before, like on a grand scale, and everyone's seeing you fail miserably. So it's probably better to learn and experience, small publications, small bits of PR here and there first, and then you can say, well, we know that works, now we can scale that up or amplify that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's better to be turned down by a smaller journalist than it would be to be turned down by a national journalist who is going to remember you as the person who didn't really have that much interesting content. So
what would be your 3 good habits or top tips for anybody that is thinking about doing more PR this year?
So I would say to sort of disattach yourself from what you're saying and almost write it as if you're writing about someone else. I wrote a press release about myself recently, and it was really weird writing about myself in the third person, but it actually works, and it just makes the journalist's job so much easier when you're writing something that's ready to be published. Journalists are really, really time poor, and being able to just take copy and almost copy and paste it in places they can is massively helpful for them.
So write it from the perspective of the reader or the journalist would be hugely beneficial to you.
Yeah, it is hard to write about yourself as if you're someone else, which is helpful. Why it's helpful to have someone else to do it for you, of course. But once you get used to it, it becomes easier and it definitely pays off. So my second good habit would be to be consistent with your press, sending out press releases. And as I said earlier, having a strategy. So maybe sending out one a month, having a plan for like the next few months of what you're going to write about. If you've got any product launches coming up or anything going on in the business that you can talk about, knowing about that in advance to when you send it out and having a plan for doing so.
It's a great habit there, having a plan and a strategy when it comes to your PR. What would your third and final good habit be?
My third and final good habit would be to take all of the media coverage that you can. You can never have too much media coverage because really all it's going to do is make you come across more credible. So if a journalist reaches out to you and asks you to give a comment, give that back to them quickly and give them enough that they can use. Have a look on anything online like journal requests that you can respond to. Never turn down media coverage, however small it is, because anything that is published anywhere is just at least something that you can post on your own social media. And also if people Google you, then it's going to come up and that's going to be great for your business.
That's what I think is a hugely important thing. I think that sometimes people overlook when they think how many people will view this content. They look a bit short term, like, oh, it only got X amount of views in the first week or day even sometimes. Whereas if it's evergreen and it's answering a question that people are genuinely asking, that will stay out there for years and years and years. So that piece of content that you did 2 years ago that you didn't think got many sort of views or attention at the time might come back around to be more relevant. We did a piece ourselves on crypto mining, and this was 18 months ago. That content has had more views on it in the last month than it's had in the whole time it's been on the internet. So now we're getting a whole new audience that's discovering our content from something that we did sort of 18 months, 2 years ago. And I think that's sometimes overlooked, especially when you're doing video content, interviews like this, PR, press releases, stuff like that stay out there. People will always search for those questions if it's a question that comes up quite often.
Definitely. And, everything is pretty much online nowadays. So people think of PR as newspapers and things that are going to get used as a fish wrapper tomorrow. But PR is mainly online. Like all of the newspapers are online nowadays. So if someone wants to search for you or wants to search for the thing that you're all talking about, it's going to come up. What's on the internet is there forever. And a lot of people do focus on the vanity metrics and, views and likes and shares. But really, if you're giving value to someone and if you're building credibility within your brand, then that's the more important thing, really.
So if I'm watching this now and I'm thinking, we need more PR, we want to be seen by more people, we want to be covered in the press, whether it be locally or nationally, where could we find out more about yourself?
So on my website, hopemckellarpr.co.uk. I'm also on LinkedIn, just Hope McKellar, and I'm quite big on Instagram at the moment, which is Hope McKellar PR as well. So
that was Hope sharing with us her good habits when it comes to PR. Don't forget to join us next time for some more Habitz Podcast.